What makes America different than other countries? Freedom of speech and press have played a critical role in the development of America. From union protests in the late 1800s to Vietnam protests to civil rights marches, the protection of expression of beliefs has shaped America to become the symbol of a vibrant democracy. This principle is often taken for granted, but the World Press Freedom Map demonstrates its importance.
The World Press Freedom Map was created by Freedom House, and it's a three-color representation of the levels of press freedoms throughout the world. You can see that it is three colors, green being the most free, yellow being moderate, and red being not free. Free is to have the freedom to say and write what it is the press wants to write without being sanctioned by the government or being overseen by the government. This is a very powerful metaphor, and it gives people an understanding of really where we are in the world with our freedoms. Having so many countries in red and yellow really indicates to people how fortunate we are to be living in a country with a free press society.
What makes our First Amendment protections unique is that as a country, as citizens, we can speak out freely and openly disagree with the government. And what makes us unique is not all countries have that. I've always wondered, like in other countries that suppress freedom of speech, all the ideas that have been suppressed in those countries. In some of my other government classes, we look at China, we look at Russia, where civil liberties are not a guarantee.
An example of how freedom of speech and freedom of the press is important to our democracy was when the Pentagon Papers was released, first by the New York Times and then the Washington Post. The federal government had not been completely truthful to the people when it came to the scope of involvement in Vietnam and their assessment of the chances of success there. And it was with the press actually releasing this information that the American citizens became better informed and then were able to express their opinions to the government about whether we should be in Vietnam or not. Freedom of speech includes the right to express unpopular ideas. And the foundation of our democracy depends on people being able to express their thoughts and opinions, whether popular or not, whether favorable to the government or not.
There have been 673 women's marches around the world, showing how people are not afraid to embrace their free speech rights and express their views. Without the protection of the First Amendment, all protesters criticizing any political candidate or expressing their beliefs could be thrown in jail or even killed, which is the policy of some countries in the world.
If you look at the Women's March, our freedom of speech is completely ours. That's why you have people who can march for things that are hateful things, as well as people that can march for good things. All that comes under freedom of speech. Once you start to censor one, it censors it all. The ability to protest made us feel like we were able to have some sort of power and control in a situation that we thought was powerless. That ability to protest in the Women's March resulted in more women around the country running for elected office. It resulted in thousands of women entering the political field that never had before. It resulted in millions of women becoming activists who were never activists before this. So we are changing the landscape of American politics simply by an enormous march that mobilized a lot of women.
While we have made great strides towards the freedom of expression, questioning on what classifies as free speech often appears in modern events.
The First Amendment is not about opinions you agree with. It's not about opinions that are right and reasonable. The First Amendment is about opinions that you passionately disagree with and the right of others to express them.
I mean, the First Amendment applies only to the government, right? I mean, the First Amendment is a limitation on the government, on the president. When football players want to kneel, they are in the tradition of people exercising First Amendment rights. If the government tried to stop them, it would violate the Constitution. It doesn't do that when an owner tries to stop them.
If a player is fired for kneeling, would they have a First Amendment case against the owner, the NFL, for firing them?
No, because the First Amendment applies only to the government.
As I observe political developments around the world, I am extremely grateful that the U.S. Constitution protects my ability to express my political views without fear of government sanction or imprisonment. In the U.S., the benefits of freedom of expression can be seen throughout everyday life, from the media on my phone to discussions on television and radio to conversations between friends. It is important to honor and recognize the right of free expression given to the U.S. citizens, especially during times of political division. If you have a strong opinion about a public issue, express it. Join a march, write an editorial, attend a public meeting, and by all means, vote. At this time, people have not been reluctant to express their views on a variety of political, social, and financial subjects. Both attack and defense of the president have been vigorous. It is this freedom to express one's views, except for incitements of violence, without governmental punishment that makes the United States different from many other countries. And that freedom must be defended from attack or limitation.
Democracy certainly is built on, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and if that were to be taken away, we would certainly slip into the darkness.
Democracy dies in darkness. If people don't know, if people aren't informed, then democracy will die.
Democracies function best when there's knowledge and transparency. So to me, the slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness," means that a democracy cannot fully function when there is ignorance and lack of transparency.